Hello, assalamu alaikum, and welcome to 786 Boulevard. We are parked at the confusing intersection of culture, art, and spirituality. This is the podcast where Muslims come together to discuss film, TV, art, and other forms of popular culture. Today, inshallah, we shall be delving into, for the first time, fashion and in particular, sneaker culture. This is an episode that me and Hasnain have been looking forward to for some time and very eager to get into, given the fact that we are both avid sneakerheads. And inshallah, we shall be discussing, along with our co-host Zaahid MA, who is a modest men's fashion guru and a sneakerhead as well. We'll be discussing the relationship between sneaker culture and spirituality. How do we balance the two? Is it possible to have a love of sneakers, something so materialistic, when we are practicing Muslims? What is the relationship between enjoying something materialistic and our spirituality? What does Islam say about expressing yourself via fashion? What does Islam say about expressing yourself via sneakers? Is sneaker culture simply a culture of vanity and excessiveness? And is it possible for Muslims to be so involved in sneaker culture when so many sneakers are made in poor and unfair working conditions? This is a topic that I'm really excited to get into. Before we start, don't forget that you should be subscribed to this podcast on all different channels. We are on YouTube, we are on Apple Podcasts, we are on Spotify, and we are on Anchor. Please leave us a good review, leave us a 5-star review. It really helps out the podcast, and don't forget to share this podcast episode with your friends. Welcome to 786 Boulevard. Hasnain, Zaahid, Assalamu alaikum. Thank you guys so much for joining me on this podcast. It's been a long time coming. Hasnain, me and you know, we've been talking about this episode for quite some time.
I'm ready to go for this one.
As I was saying to Zaahid before we started, what I love about this podcast is the fact that we can bring the most two random topics together, here being sneakers and Islam and spirituality, mash them together and kind of see where it goes. So we've got a kind of a plan laid out, and inshallah we'll have an interesting discussion. But deeper than, simply talking about sneakers and, our love for them, I feel like it's also a deeper conversation about materialism and owning nice things and, how spirituality kind of fits into that. So inshallah, it should be a good discussion. Before I start, I've got a hypothetical. There is a law passed and every man is limited to just 3 sneakers. Which 3 are you keeping? Hasnain, you go first.
Yeah, all right. I'm ready for this one. Number 1, you need comfort. You need something that's very comfortable.
True.
Ultra Boost. Ultra Boost. You can't go wrong with Ultra Boots. These are amazing. These are by far the best. I have 3 pairs of these. And we could talk about excessiveness later on, but I have 3 pairs of these. All right. Yeah, now, number 2, you have to make a statement. You need a statement piece, that your kicks.
Right.
You can't go wrong with the human racers.
Wow.
Okay.
You gotta go with the Pharrell human racers.
Adidas theme going on.
Just like Ultra Boost, they got the Ultra Boost, but these are a statement piece. And last but not least, I'm a stripes over checks guy.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay, cool.
Interesting.
No, that's cool. I'm mixed opinions.
Gotta go with the black Yeezys.
Okay. I'll try and get that color too. That's a hard one to get.
I felt like your 3 choices would be more varied than that, but
really? I have a bonus pair that if Allah said you could have 1 more pair, I'll give it to you. Jordan 1 Shadows. You can't go wrong with the Jordan 1 Shadows.
Yeah. Fair enough.
I have 2 pairs of these because I love these so much.
Nice. Zaahid, it's your turn.
Mine. I mean, I wish I could grab them and show them.
You don't have to. You don't have to. Hasnain kind of set the benchmark for grabbing. You don't have to grab them. I don't have mine with me.
Cool. Because I wanna. I mean, they've been in. I mean, I keep them on ice. These kind of pairs, but
nice.
In terms of, so I kind of have a similar order, but I'm kind of like mixed when it comes to the kind of kicks that I like. I essentially have my nice ones that I kind of wear outside, and then I have my beaters, essentially ones that kind of just wear in the rain, whatever weather. So Air Max 1s would be my sort of go-to when it comes to like comfort, everyday running around.
London style.
They hold up quite well. It's a particular model though. I think it's like a Air Max 1 Ultra model in particular. It actually has like 3M around the whole entire toe box and everything. So like the whole side panel. So they light up when you're on the street and stuff. So but I beat them up. So those would be like my comfort ones. Again, I have ones that I kind of like wear out and kind of like not show off a little bit. But I haven't worn them because I'm contemplating on they're kind of like a backup. But 3 pairs. The second one would be off-white Prestos.
Oh wow, you have them. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
So
So
those are scary to
couple.
wear. Those are scary to wear because
Yeah,
they're worth a lot.
exactly. So, alhamdulillah, yeah, actually won the original colorway and then the triple black pair. But at the time, I guess I'll come on to it later. But yeah, I saw the first pair like quite early,
Nice.
and then it went up in price. But yeah, second pair would be the triple black Prestos, off-white Prestos, and then the third one would be a hard one, but I'll probably go for, again, something a bit more like premium, something that, you know, a lot of people don't have, but again, quite versatile. And I also have these as well. Another one that's on ice, essentially, is the Nike Sacai waffles.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I've seen your Instagram. I've seen your pictures.
Yeah.
Of them,
Those are fresh.
In the white, grey, monochrome colorway. So,
nice.
yeah, those would be my 3 pairs. Yeah.
So my 3 pairs, I would agree with Hasnain. Comfort, Ultra Boost, because those are just super comfortable. You know, amazing. Yeah. Take them wherever when you're traveling, going on holiday, going for a long walk. Those are absolutely wonderful. I would also pick a pair of Jordan 1s because those are just, you know, iconic expression.
Yep.
The way they look on you, just absolutely beautiful. And you have the whole like Michael Jordan mentality and history in those sneakers, which we'll talk about later. And thirdly, I think I'll go for the Pegasus Turbo 2, which is a running sneaker, but it was also a very, very, very comfortable sneaker as well. So before we get into like speaking about sneakers and what they mean to us and the culture and the aesthetics of it, I did want to ask this question toward the end, but I'm going to throw it in the beginning instead, because I feel like it's important to have this context before we start this discussion. And it's speaking about sneakers, clothing in general, and kind of like fair trade, knowing how they're made, knowing where they're made. The reason I want to speak about that is because I want to make sure that before we, you know, dive into a conversation about, you know, how much we love wearing these things, we do need to kind of tackle that moral cloud that kind of hovers over companies like Nike and Adidas about how these trainers and sneakers are made. You know, I'll be honest with you, I'm not too familiar with the subject. I know I need to learn more. Based on what I've read and what I've understood, I do believe that Nike and Adidas have kind of put their foot down more so on areas of the world where kind of slave labor is used to make these shoes. I know that Adidas in particular are much better at this now. However, right now we have reports coming out that China, for example, is using Uyghur Muslims in a sort of forced labor to create not only clothes and sneakers for Nike and Adidas, but also you know, computer items for Apple, things for Dell as well. So I feel like it's like a broader conversation on here in the West living in excess and luxury. You know, the shoes we wear, the clothes we wear, the cars we drive. In many ways, sometimes are there for us to enjoy because someone else in the world is poor and suffering, right? So how do you guys, Zaahid, I'll start with you. How do you kind of, you know, draw the line, or not draw the line, how do you kind of reconcile, you know, your morality when it comes to wearing a pair of shoes, but also kind of keeping in mind that you don't want it to be a case where that the shoes that you're wearing were made by someone who was underpaid or in horrible conditions?
I mean, with this kind of conversation, it's kind of comes and goes with, like, just, I guess, the times and when I kind of have these conversations with people. And I haven't had this conversation for quite a long time, actually, because the reality is, I think, like, and, you know, I'm a person that is part of this, is that it's because it's kind of thing where we don't see it, so it's like out of sight, out of mind kind of thing. Yeah. We know it's there, 100% we know it's there. Yeah. But because we don't physically see it all the time, or I guess we're not bombarded with it on social media, news doesn't really push it out that much like that. It's kind of like we just go about our day and get what we need and so on and so forth, and we forget that it's come from a place where if we knew better, or even if we, you know, put ourselves in that position, like we wouldn't want to sort of endorse that.
Yeah.
I think there's something you mentioned before, and I don't know if I still agree with it now, but it's kind of a thing where obviously boycotts and things like this have happened in the past.
Yeah.
All the time, whether it's like a particular, for whatever reason, a particular illustration or just the fact that you know where the kicks come from.
Yeah.
But it's kind of, I think somebody mentioned before a while ago, which was like if you boycott these brands and you stop purchasing their stuff, which I'll be honest, which is near impossible. I feel like it would have to be a big group of people to do that. But if that was the case, then it's kind of like, now you're not buying the shoes that are getting sold, and in return, whatever wage they were getting, even if it's sort of like less than bare minimum, they're not even then getting that. So I think it was actually to do with more high street retailers, but I'm sure it does apply the same to like all industries. And so it's kind of like, you know, it's like a double-edged sword in a way. It's like you don't know how to approach it, kind of thing. So I think when it comes to like me now, I'm more so thinking about, instead of like what I'm purchasing, in a way, I'm kind of just being more selective now. So like with my purchases, rather than, because I'll be honest with you, you can buy shoes, like trainers, like copies of designs from, you know, these high street retailers, and then you go all up to like you said, like the, you know, the Dior ones that have come out, and obviously those are different because they're made in where they're made in, like what, Italy, I think, or somewhere. Like they're not made in a poorer country with poorer conditions, but it's like just being a bit more conscious with it. That's the kind of approach that I've taken, because, you know, the reality is that can I fix the whole issue myself? Probably not. Can a group of us come together? 100%. But will
100%.
the world come together? Like, I very much doubt it. People have different priorities at the end of the day. So right now I'm essentially like, you know, refining my collection, being very selective with what I purchase, and if I can sort of reuse them, i.e. give them away or give them back if I can, then I'll try to. So
I mean, I will say that when it comes to, for example, the reports about Uyghur Muslims being used to kind of, you know, as cheap labor to make Nike, Adidas trainers, you know, there was a bunch of other companies on that list too, including Apple and Dell. You know, right now I'm using a MacBook, and, you know, we're using iPhones as well to facilitate this podcast. So there is a sense of, you know, how much can you really escape it, and is it, and there's a question of, is it more a case of the world that we live in, and the fact that world that we live in is so horrible, as opposed to, you know, singling out a brand per se. So, for example, Nike and Adidas might have a lot of slack for facilitating this kind of model where they make shoes off the backs of people who aren't being paid enough. You know, if that is the case. But at the same time, most of the brands that I won't say most of the brands, but a lot of the brands that we buy from are doing the same thing. If you buy a cheap t-shirt, for example, from ASOS or from River Island, as opposed to buying it from Dolce & Gabbana, you know, there's still a high chance that that t-shirt is cheap for the reason that it's been made on the label that, you know, it isn't really correct. Hasnain, what are your kind of thoughts on this?
Yeah, so for me, it's kind of unavoidable at this point, right? It's so hard to avoid it. You know, like I seek out companies who are like not doing that, but the thing is, you have to pay a higher price to support that, right?
So, excuse my ignorance, but do designer companies, like, are they? Would you say that designer companies, like, for example, the higher end, like Gucci and Louis Vuitton and Dolce & Gabbana, these companies, assuredly they make their things like under better conditions? Is that why they're so expensive? Or
I would think so. I mean, like the Dior ones, for an example, right? If you go on the website, it says made in Milan or whatever it is, right? But then they have an asking price of $2,000, but now they're being resold for $12,000, right? So the thing is, you know, if you want to be morally responsible, and let's not, and let me just put Gucci and Louis to the side, you know, let's talk about brands that individuals are making on their own, and they're you know, they're doing it, you know, in good moral, you know, good compass, you know, not trying to, you know, go that route, you know, to manufacture, to create, and Zaahid, you would know this best, but you know, to go the the moral route and make a fashion brand, whatever it is, it requires a lot more effort, which requires you to pay up a lot more.
Yeah.
You know, so for example, I'll give you an example. I recently bought Sabas. There's this brand, Turkish brand. They make Turkish style shoes, and I think it's really cool. But the thing is, they're kind of pricey. They're $220 for a pair of just walking around city sandals, right?
Right.
But if you look into their story, basically they hire like individuals who, you know, fled war in Turkey. They bring them to the shop and they show you like, this is the person who made your slippers for you, and we support him and we bought him. And
Right.
so something like that for me, I'm like, hell yeah, I'll pay the $220 and buy these very unique sandals, you know, that are different.
Yeah.
But in today's world, like this is from I don't even know a brand, and this is like $25 shirt. It's unavoidable at this point. And so the only way I think that, you know, we can try to minimize the damage is just minimize your excessiveness, you know. I you know, for me, I only buy things at this point if I know I'm going to wear them or if I know I'm going to use them, you know. And how I kind of keep myself sane about this is that, listen, it's a circle. So if I'm going to invest $2,000 on my MacBook Pro and they're doing this, well, then I'm going to use my MacBook Pro to bring good into this world, to try to give back, you know, whether that's doing this podcast or whether that's me doing my work from home and making money and donating to Yemen and all these other causes. So I think of it as a full circle. Like, hey, I'm investing into this. Unfortunately, I have no way around it because any laptop I buy is probably going to have that. But what am I using this to give back to humanity? And that's kind of how I think about it in my head.
That's interesting. And I think it's also worth pointing out that, you know, Adidas and Nike have both said that they're investigating what's happening with weak Muslims and you know, will actively try to get to the bottom of it. Adidas themselves have, for example, I think been much more strict on that front. And I think even moving aside from that conversation, we have the conversation of, you know, what kind of carbon footprint what you buy leaves. You know, I was watching that episode of Patriot Act with Hasmin Haj, where he talks about how, you know, when you buy clothes from companies like Zara, you know, it takes, you know, the stats he was giving about how much pollution it takes to create, for example, a t-shirt or a pair of jeans is insane. So even that is another conversation that we need to have. And I think that, you know, I will put kind of like the onus on me to kind of explore these avenues. But like you said, I think it's important that, you know, to understand that we can only try our best. And there is a lot more to sneakers and sneaker culture than, as we will discuss later, the excessiveness on it. So, you know, there is a kind of mentality where people throw money on trainers just because it's kind of like a status. You know, they'll throw $2,000 on those Jordan 1 Dior's because they want to flash.
It's 12 grand at this point.
Or 12 grand because they want to flash. Or those, what's it called, the Ben & Jerry SB Dunks because they want to flash, you know. And I think that there's a separate kind of circle within sneaker culture, which is more about the culture, more about, you know, the expression than it is anything to do with the money that you spend and the kind of flashiness. So moving on to that, sneakers mean a lot of different things to different people. What would you say that they mean to you? Zaahid, let's start with you.
I mean, it's kind of numerous things, really. I mean, I guess it kind of starts from when we're little, when we're younger, kind of how we see them. I think before, when I was younger, it was all about the brand. It was all about the swoosh or the three stripes, or, you know, it was about the brand. It was about the logo and then the way it made people feel. And then essentially, as I've grown up and, you know, obviously earned a lot more money and bought loads of shoes and got rid of loads of shoes and sneakers and so on, it's now for me, it's like appreciating the design. I have a background in graphic design, so
nice.
I'm generally creative.
So you really have that mind when you look at, you know, a sneaker. You understand what makes it good and what makes it attractive, and then
I mean, my thing is, I mean, you'll kind of see a theme even in some of the pictures I do and just what I wear on feet. But I'll wear either white or light grey. The colorways will always be the same, but it'll be a different model or different brand. So it's about, like, for example, like the way the white and the grey hits on like an Air Force One, for example, will look different on like the Sakai's. And the way it's laid on the Sakai's is different to the way like on like a pair of Puma Clydes or like an Ultra Boost and so right now it's more so about just appreciating the design, like what goes into it, you know, how creative these brands are getting, and just appreciating the design more so, because at the end of the day, you have one left foot, you have one right foot. You know, it's part of the technology. I mean, you have, you know, laces, you have a tongue. I mean, the ingredients are pretty much all the same for the most part, and so what everybody does is quite different. And so that's kind of that's kind of where I am in terms of like with sneakers and stuff. I just really just much appreciate it, because also I can appreciate it from a distance as well. I don't have to buy them to enjoy them. I can see the, you know, the photos that people do and the photography, the fits that people do. I don't have to like purchase it to like you know, appreciate the designs and stuff. So
yeah, I think, you know, I think for me, when you grow up, especially, I'm sure all of us here kind of grew up in that kind of grit, you know, that the underbelly of our cities, New York and London, you know, without, you know, not so much in the upper class where we were handling everything, but rather in environments where we had to strive and climb up the ladder per se. You know, I wouldn't say I grew up poor, but at the same time, we grew up, it wasn't a case where we could kind of buy everything we wanted, you know. I was allowed to buy one thing here or there every so often. You know, we didn't grow up with a TV, I remember. And we were kind of just making ends meet month to month, as I'm sure so many working families were. I think when you grow up in that environment, you look at something like, let's say, a pair of Air Max 90s, I remember it was for me. And, you know, you wish that you could own a pair. You wish that you could wear a pair, but it's something so unattainable to you. And I think that when you grow older, Zaahid, as you said, you start making money, you start working, you start grinding, then you're able to kind of, it's a very materialistic thing, but you're able to purchase something that when you were young was completely unattainable to you. And I think that's part of the for me personally, that's part of what's so gratifying about it to me, because it's kind of like rewarding myself for all that hard work that I've been doing over the years, you know. And we'll talk about this later as well. But for me, like, my whole thing with getting into sneakers was like, what I realized was I was working really hard, but I wasn't kind of enjoying any of the money, because as a person, I don't really buy things, you know. Everything in terms of clothing, I don't know any piece of clothing that's worth more than £20, for example. You know, my car is like 15 years old. I'm not a kind of person that splashes out. But yeah, but when it comes to so I realized that I need to like take some of that money and enjoy it, buy something that brings me some sort of materialistic gratification, not in a way that takes me away from my spirituality, but just something that I can enjoy as a blessing from God, you know, to enjoy your rizq. You know, I mean, there's even get to a later verse in the Quran about, you know, Allah giving you that blessing and wanting to see you enjoying your rizq, enjoying what you've earned, enjoying the fruits of what you've earned. So for me, that's what it is. Hasnain, to you, what are sneakers to you? And I think for you, it's very different, because American sneaker culture is a whole different ballgame. It's later. But American sneaker culture, and the thing is, like, you know, I feel because, you know, I've definitely moved toward like the American side of sneaker culture, and when I wear shoes here in London, no one really cares. You know, no one understands what a pair of Jordan 1s are or what a pair of Ultra Boosts are per se. When I go to America, it's like, oh, you got the Jordan 1s. You know, people, they actually look at your feet and they praise you for what you're wearing. You know? And it's not about, oh, you know, you're amazing because you have those. It's like, wow, I appreciate your expression when it comes to your footwear. So tell us about your relationship with sneakers. And again, like you mentioned that you grew up in a very African American environment, and sneaker culture in America is essentially black culture, right? So tell me about that.
So before I even start, I remember the first time I met you, what did you ask me? You were like, yo, are those Yeezys that you're wearing? That's the first question you asked me when you first met me. I was like, yeah, you want to try them on? So, yeah, I mean, for me, sneakers mean two things, right? It's your personality, because for me, I wear my personality, right? So my sneakers are going to be, you know, saying something about my personality, right? I like, a lot of my sneakers are black, as you saw, right? Because, you know, I'm more about the subtle, casual, chic type of, you know, guy. I like to, like, you know, stay a low profile. I don't like to be big, flashy, but I want to make a statement. That's kind of my personality. So I wear my personality, right? And what sneakers mean to me is my childhood. You know, like you said, growing up, you couldn't afford those sneakers. Like, for example, I'll give you a story. Growing up, you know, even Air Force Ones white, they were $80, but my parents would be like, no way, like, it's a lot of money. Why don't you go to the Payless and get something for $20?
Yeah.
You know, I remember my first pair of Jordans were $120. There weren't even any like special pair of Jordan ones. They were just like a royal blue and white. And I remember I saved up 6 months
Wow.
and made $50. I was a kid. I was like maybe like in high school. And then my dad was like, if you save up this much money and you make this much money, I'll put in the rest.
Yeah.
On a rainy day, me and my dad walked to VIM's. This is a really old store that used to sell sneakers and clothes. We walked there, we bought the sneakers, and I was the happiest kid in the planet.
Wow.
Yeah,
But you know, like growing up, I couldn't afford like any Jordans, any Nikes, any like Adidas at that time. You know, Air Force,
Yeah.
Timberlands. Timberlands are huge in New York City culture, or Air Force Ones. I couldn't afford them. But now, like you said, you're making money. You know, you're being successful. All of us are being successful. We're moving up in the world. You know, for me back in the days, $120 pair of Jordans was a lot. To me, it's just like, all right, like how many pairs am I going to pick up, right? That's the question I'm going to ask myself today. So for me, you know, I tried to pick up sneakers that remind me of my childhood. Like Jordan 1s always remind me of my childhood. It reminded me of that struggle and how far I got. And that's kind of goes like where you can enjoy your money. Like, listen, I have worked really hard in my personal growth, in the growth of my spirituality to get to where I am today. God's given me everything I have, from my family to my friends to my career to my job to this MacBook to you guys. You know, why not go and enjoy something that God's given me? You know, to do it. So that's what I do. I buy sneakers that remind me of my childhood. You know, I couldn't afford this long ago, and now I've come this far. So this is a reminder of my growth and my continuous growth moving forward. So personality and childhood is what sneakers mean to me.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think between all the three of us, the one common denominator that we've been speaking about is kind of like how sneakers reflect our grind. And that's definitely what it is for me. Like I told you, like I realized that I was working really hard. So I work multiple jobs and I have like multiple streams of income. And I would be working like weekends and, you know, nights and not really spending time with my family, not seeing my kid sometimes for weeks at a time, was really spending proper time with him. And then I realized like I wasn't seeing any of those fruits. Yeah, alhamdulillah, like bills were paid, you know. House was all good, you know, all that stuff is there. So I'm not saying like the money was just throwing away, you know, when you pay an electric bill, you're paying for warmth, you know, when you pay, for example, when you put fuel in your car, you know, it's an absolute blessing. But my point was that I wasn't kind of enjoying any percentage of that. So I realized I needed to put like some sort of percentage aside and just buy something that kind of like I could enjoy. And for me, I found personally that was sneakers because I don't really spend money on anything else. And one conversation I was asking myself was about my relationship with this materialistic thing. Because, you know, when it comes, when, you know, as Muslims, you know, all of us here are practicing, all of us here are very close to our faith. And materialism is a very scary word in Islam. You know, when you talk about having, for example, something nice, enjoying something nice, there's a very scary conversation there to be had, which is why I'm sure half the people listening right now are like, what the heck are these guys talking about when it comes to, you know, spiritual? They're going on about sneakers as if it's something crazy, as if it's something deep. But that is the interesting question. It's not about sneakers. It's a deeper question about owning materialistic things and, you know, enjoying materialism. And can you enjoy materialistic things as a Muslim? And I actually posed this question to a sheikh, one who I really admire and look up to. And I asked him this question. I was like, look, you know, I own a select pair of sneakers. It's something I enjoy buying and purchasing. Should I feel bad about this? Is it something I should stop? Should I just get rid of them and, you know, not enjoy them? And he said something very interesting to me. He said, as Muslims, we need to remember that Allah has created the blessings of this world for the believers. Out of His mercy, He allows the non-believers to enjoy it too. So, for example, when you have rizq and you buy something, it's not you should be ashamed of spending that. In fact, Allah loves to see you spending that money because you've worked hard for it, you've earned it in a halal way, and He loves to see you spending that money. He said the issue is not in buying it or owning it. The issue is if at any point you even a little bit, even if subconsciously, feel as if you are a better person than someone else because of what you're wearing in your feet, that's where the issue is. So I'll give you an example, you know, people have that saying, you know, how can you wear nice shoes, for example, when people on the other side of the world don't wear shoes at all? How can you drive a nice car when people have car? How can you have a nice house when people don't have houses in the world? And so that was kind of like what was triggering my question. And his point was that the conversation is not about that, because obviously you still give your sadaqah, you still help out, you still give charity.
Yeah.
The conversation is not about that, and more so about what relationship those materialistic things have over you. So if they take over that kind of, if they take over your inner self and make you feel as if you're a better person than someone else, that's where it becomes a problem. He also said, don't go crazy. He said, buy a few, but don't go crazy, because there is the issue of israf as well. But, you know, I even looked up some Quranic verses. So, for example, Allah says, Surah Al-Araf, verse 31, he says, this is a really interesting verse I found. He says, children of Adam, wear your best clothes to every mosque, but do not be excessive. So there is this whole thing in Islam about wearing your best clothes. You know, I found a bunch of ahadith where the Prophet, peace be upon him, would recommend wearing nice clothes and nice garments on special occasions. He would own specific garments, for example, for Eid and other occasions when he would visit delegations and stuff like that. So clothing was an important part of the Prophet's life as well. And I think what's happened now is that's just translated into this crazy world we live in, where we're no longer living in the East, we're no longer living in Pakistan or in Arabia. You know, we're living here in the West, and now nice clothes might translate to nice sneakers, you know, as opposed to, you know, where it was in those days. But like, when it comes to balancing your love for sneakers, I'll ask you, Hasnain, first, because you got the biggest selection of all of us, right? And we had this conversation the other day. We had this conversation the other day when you were like, if I was to spend a certain X amount of money on, I won't mention the amount, if I was to spend X amount of money on sneakers, I would wear them. And I was like, what, are you serious? So like, how do you kind of balance your love for something so materialistic with kind of like that fear of falling into excessiveness?
That's a really good question. So for me, spending an X amount of money on something materialistic, for me, is not excessive. For me, it's a form of this is going to sound weird, but let me explain it. It's a form of appreciation for my Lord. You know what I mean? It's a form of everything I have today is because of everything that's given to me, right? So if I'm gonna go and spend $2,000, and let's just use the Dior ones as an example, if I go and spend $12,000 and go buy it, right? If I go and spend $12,000 on Dior ones, for me, it's like, when I'm buying them, it's just like, thank you, God, for putting me in a position where not only can I afford these, but I also can buy these. I'm in a situation where I can buy these, but I'm also in a situation that if I can afford $12,000 sneakers, what can I do for humanity also? You know, it's a two-way. For me, I see everything like that, a two-way street. For me, if I'm going to spend X amount on a materialistic thing, I can do the same thing by giving back to humanity. And I do. I think that's where the balance is for me. And I don't think it's really excessive when you go and you make sneakers one of your hobbies, where you'll have 20 to 25, 30 pairs, right? Because, for example, when I bought my human racers, not the ones that I showed you, I have another pair. They have this thing where if you buy a pair of human racers, they'll give one to a child in Cambodia.
Oh wow!
So what did I do? Knowing me, Nouri, I bought 5 pairs.
Yeah. Wow.
And to me, it's just like, okay, is this excessive? If the more I buy, the more they're helping me give.
Yeah.
So for me, that's kind of how I see it. It's just like, hey, I'm going to enjoy what God's given me, but I'm so I don't want to sound arrogant, but like, I'm God conscious enough to know what I'm doing, and knowing that I'm also going to give back to something that's more important to me. So that's kind of where I split the balance, I think. For me, I think I'm in that position where I can, alhamdulillah, do that.
No, I think it's very interesting, even for me, for example, when it comes to various pairs of sneakers. Like, there's certain sneakers I'll buy, and I'll just have that. And let's talk about like feeling and emotion and energy. I'll just feel like, I feel so blessed to be able to have this. It's something I've wanted for a long time. I feel so blessed to have it. The first thing I say when I see it is alhamdulillah. Every time I wear them, I think alhamdulillah. Like, it's interesting that you talk about how those things bring you closer to God, because I do have that feeling as well. Not just with shoes, for example, let's say, for example, using a laptop or using a phone, or, if you're a techie, for example, you might have an Apple Watch or whatever. Certain things you own, you can think, alhamdulillah, I'm so lucky have this, and in an interesting way, it can bring you closer to God. On the flip side, there's been times where, and I for example, there's been times where I own two pairs. I own two pairs of shoes right now. Who every time I wear them, I'm like, why did I buy these? I don't feel really good wearing these. I feel like it's a waste of money. And honestly, I'm gonna get rid of them because like they're not bringing me closer to God. And even if you leave spirituality out of the conversation, they're not doing anything for me. They don't benefit my life in any way. Of course, materialistic things don't benefit your life in any way. But if it becomes a case of where you're spending money on something that you don't even enjoy, then what's the point? As a prime example, I bought an Apple Watch last week. Just kind of like, not in a way that I thought would improve my life, but I thought, you know what, let me just try it out. It might help me, notifications with work and stuff. I put it on and I wore it. I'm like, I feel horrible wearing this because, it's not bringing me any joy. I feel weighed down by it. I feel the materialism of it, For that reason, I returned it because I wasn't enjoying it anyway. So I think what we're saying is you can spend money, you can enjoy things, but when it comes to a point where you're just throwing money out to kind of fill in that void, because that is another thing that people do, right? They go shopping and just throw away lots of money and come home with 10 shopping bags because they feel like it will fill that void in them. If you do that's a problem as well, right? So we don't want to fall into that trap as well. Zaahid, when it comes to excessiveness, and sneakers, how do you kind of rectify those two things?
This topic here, I feel like there's a couple of points in my life where I've definitely thought about this. And I feel like definitely when I started practicing, which was maybe about, let's say about 6 years ago now, when you start to think that little bit more, then you kind of make, like you both mentioned, you make certain, choices and decisions differently. Now, there was a point in time, I don't know when it was, but I was that person who had like 25 plus pairs, every brand you name. And then I don't know what happened, but what happened was I was trying to like sort of make my room neater. I was trying to move them around, and every time I tried to move them in a different space, they were in the way. They were in the way. I couldn't find a nice way to present them. They were just falling over. Do I keep the boxes? Do I not keep the boxes? Yeah. It got to a point where I said to myself, SubhanAllah, I've got one left foot, I've got one right foot. At some point we're gonna die one day, and when we die one day, these shoes are gonna essentially, I don't know why I thought this way, but these shoes are gonna outlive me in a way, and for me it didn't feel right. Obviously, and my intention is not to pass these on to my kids when they grow up or so on and so forth. At the time I purchased them because I wanted to look nice, and I had the money at the time, and so. When that point came, I literally either gave a lot of pairs away to like family who, don't really buy trainers, and a lot of them were in good condition, so I gave them away. Some I threw away, and I was holding on to like really old Vans and stuff, like because I'm like, oh yeah, there's some wears in them though. Like I'm that guy where I'm like there's still this life in them, but I'm looking at my cupboards and it's just full. So I said I don't want to, I said I don't want to die one day and I have all this stuff that ends up, getting thrown away. And obviously we didn't think about the environment as well. Like it's just a waste. It's just a big waste. And so as I said, from that day onwards, I'm going to have I'm going to have like 10 pairs of just hype. That's what I said. but and I'm kind of there. But the thing is, a lot of GRs are really, really nice as well. So I kind of buy those. So that's the kind of approach I thought about it. And then obviously now in sort of recent times, we all know this, where the resale game is a thing now. And so there has been times where when it comes to thinking about the product and so on, I don't think it from a perspective of, it's going to make me look nice. I'm like, okay, here's some money to be made now. It's an investment. And so I go through. Yeah. So in recent times, I've done that. And subhanAllah, there's not a really long story, but obviously when you do start to practice and stuff, you do get to this stage where if you don't know Arabic, you kind of have to learn it. You need to learn it. In some cases it become obligatory upon you. You can't understand the Quran and the Hadith and so on and so forth. Right. And so this is at the time when the Travis Scott ones came out, and me, just kind of how you guys were reminding me as well, like appreciating kind of the pairs I've got, because I've never walked into the store and purchased these. 9 out of 10 pairs are all raffles.
Mm.
And so, well, of course, we're not betting and we're not, cheating the system. It is true, by Allah, we've been blessed with these pairs. And so, alhamdulillah, I won this pair.
You won a pair of Jordan 1 Travis Scott's?
Yeah, the highs, yeah.
Wow. That's insane. That's insane,
man.
If you see my track record with raffles, subhanAllah, you'll be surprised. You'll be like shocked. It just like, obviously, I even like the Sean Weatherspoons. Like I got those, like I won a raffle of those, and it's crazy. I kind of regret. I'll get to that later, but I kind of regret. So I sold them early, and for real.
Yeah, you shouldn't have sold them, man.
Oh man, you know why? You know why I sold them? Off a tangent, but the reason why I sold them was because I normally wear a lot of black, grey, and that's about it. That's my wardrobe really. And they were multicolored. And I said, yeah, these are not going to go with what I wear. And so I sold them for like super cheap. And then now they're like $1,000 or something or whatever. So they're like, yeah, I feel really bad every time I see them on screen. But anyway, so going back to the point where Travis Scott ones. So like I thought to myself like me in particular, I don't wear highs. I don't wear any high top sneakers. I always kind of go for low tops. It's kind of my thing. And so I was like, I know I'm going to sell these anyways. And so because of the idea of I didn't want these pairs to be like, still here when I'm gone and just kind of just thinking about everything, I used that money to invest in my deen. And so those pairs actually paid for like a whole year of Arabic. And when I say I couldn't speak a word, I couldn't even read the alphabet. Obviously now, I'm still practicing, and I've only done a year, so I'm not fluent or anything. I'm very much still learning, but that's what that pair was able to give me. So, subhanAllah, it wasn't the Travis. Subhanallah, it wasn't. Forgive me, it wasn't the Travis Scott Air Jordan ones. It was the Off-White Prestos, the first colorway. My bad.
Oh, nice. Okay.
It was those first. Yeah, and I think I saw them early as well. So my bad. It wasn't the Travis Scott. It was those. And
but still, amazing. The fact that you've taken something you enjoy and love, and something that is from the outset kind of so materialistic, and used it to help your deen. That's just insane, mashallah. That's a big blessing. Now even though I'm not the quickest of readers when it comes to reading Arabic, the fact that I can read it now that I couldn't before, and it was because of these pair of trainers that allow me to do that. I mean, this will be something like I'll mention to my little ones and stuff, and so they can have an actual perspective, inshallah, if they do ever, I'm not saying they want to be born in wealth, but inshallah, you don't know where the future holds, but I want them to kind of use that as an anchor of some sort. For sure. And I think something nice you mentioned, and it's funny, I don't really share this story because it just sounds so weird to people who don't really understand sneakers. So whoever's listening right now, you can sit back and just think, what the heck are these guys talking about, as I mentioned the story. But I remember I had one pair of Ultra Boosts, and I was on my way to Ziyara in Iraq. And Hasnain, when you go to Iraq, like your shoes get really messed up, right? Anything you take really to Iraq will get destroyed, right? And I was like, what, I'm going for a good cause, I'm going for my deen, so I'm going to sacrifice these pairs of Ultra Boosts, whatever, it's fine, it's not a big deal.
Yeah.
Before that, I had seen online, I don't know if you guys saw them. Hasnain, you'll know what I'm talking about, the Game of Thrones Ultra Boost series.
Yeah.
So there was one pair I saw.
Those are fly, by the way.
Yeah. There was one pair I liked, which was the Night's Watch one, the grey ones. Right. I saw them, but they were like £180. And I was like, I'm not going to spend that money on something when I have a pair already. So whatever. Anyway, flash forward, I took these pairs to Iraq, and they got destroyed as expected, and I kind of lost them, whatever. A few months later, I was in an outlet, an Adidas outlet in Chicago. I was looking around, and Zaahid, like the pound compared to the dollar is stronger, right?
Yeah,
so I was looking around, and I went to the cashier. I was like, "Do you guys by any chance have any Ultra Boosts?" She looks at me and she goes, "Someone just dropped off a pair of Game of Thrones Ultra Boosts."
Oh, wow.
Not only that, but today we've got a 30% off everything sale, number one.
Love it.
And number two, it's also in dollars. So I saved like half the price,
Wow.
And like, the reason I say I fear telling this story because it's about something so materialistic, but like being in that situation, to me, it feels like God was rewarding me with something materialistic true, but like rewarding me because I kind of sacrificed in his way, kind of thing. You know, the same way we talk about how, you know, when, you know, the same way you talk about, you know, you have such luck with raffles. Perhaps if, for example, it's Allah rewarding you, you know, for everything that you're doing for Him, you know. And you also spoke about how, you know, you can monetize your passion, for example, when it comes to sneakers. And me, for example, that's one thing I do as well. I invest in sneakers all the time. So I'm clueless when it comes to stocks. I'm not that kind of guy, but I do know sneakers. So that is one thing.
I can help you in both, man.
that is one thing. That is one thing I invest in. Pick the right stuff, let the value go up, and sell it all the time. And I think it's very important to monetize kind of like all your passions, and again, earn that money in halal. That's something beautiful. It's not something that we should be afraid of. You know, earning money in halal. I did want to ask the question about the danger of pride when it comes to footwear. Because we can sit here all day and talk about how great sneakers are and how much we love them and how amazing they are. But at the same time, there is this whole other side to sneakers, which is about clout, which is about wearing something, you know, that kind of invites almost envy. You know, wearing something that invites kind of negative energy. And there's even a hadith from the Prophet, as we know, he used to wear his distacha above his ankles. The reason he used to do that was because, you know, people at the time would wear their distachas lower out of arrogance, out of pride. And he specifically said on the day of judgment, Allah will not even look at those who drag their garments on the ground out of pride. So similarly today, people flash expensive clothes out of pride. You know, you see like all these musicians and rappers, you know, I've seen like some of these, you know, these episodes of Complex, I don't know if you've seen it, Sneaker Closets, when rappers go through their collections and they have rooms of sneakers just sitting there and rotting. And they live in such insane excess. It's crazy. And it's not as if, you know, I can't look into their hearts, but it seems to me it's not as if they're enjoying these things out of some sort of love for the culture, but more so, you know, they're wearing that Gucci t-shirt or Gucci jacket because it makes them feel better than everyone else. You know, they're flashing their money because it makes them feel better than everyone else. And unfortunately, this is a culture, that sneaker culture, does kind of, you know, stand side by side with, you know, even if we, the three of us here, don't see that when it comes to sneakers, and I know a lot of sneakerheads don't see that, there is this culture that exists where people, you know, wear sneakers for that kind of clout and for that kind of pride. So how do you ascertain that we do not fall into pride while wearing those shoes? Hasnain, let's start with you. When you're wearing those human races and you're walking down Manhattan, how do you stop that sense of pride, even if it's a small little speck, from coming inside your heart?
For me, like if I'm walking down and I'm wearing my most expensive sneakers, right? To me, that doesn't change like another human being being a human being. Because the thing with me is, and the thing with us is that I think our come up and our grow up has taught us how to be humble, even when we have great things. And that's something that, you know, that many individuals take advantage of. It's just like, listen, like, yes, you've got these call fours that cost you like an arm and a leg, you know. And
it's funny because so Zaahid, he posted an Instagram post of these Jordan 4s. I was like, oh, great black cat 4s. Then I had to double check that they were the right ones. I Googled them and I saw the price on those. I was like, oh God, okay. So I deleted the comment. I said, great cause 4s. Well done to you. How much money did you spend on those?
But for me, it's just like, I humble myself. I'm like, listen, you know, it took me this so long to get this far to have sneakers. If I was walking on the block and somebody said, oh, nice sneakers, can I try them on? Go ahead.
Yeah.
To me, at the end of the day, like Zaahid said, we're going to be put in, you know, in a grave. We're not taking our sneakers with us. We're not taking our watches with us. We're not taking anything with us. And for me, that's the reason. That's also the reason why I always wear my sneakers. I'm not in the resale game. I know I can make a lot of money, but for me, I'm buying something to wear because at the end of the day, it's something on your feet. It's going to get dirty, and you spend $1,000 on sneakers. You wear them, they lose half their value. I don't care, because for me, I'm humbling myself. These are just a pair of sneakers to me. When somebody compliments me, I compliment them back. Usually individuals who are complimenting me, they're also wearing something that I know. I'm like, hey, great, nice calls. Hey, nice Jordan 1s, nice, Prestos, nice Yeezys. We have a conversation about it. It's more about the hobby and the culture, keep it in your mind. This is a hobby. I don't do this because I'm above anybody else. All of us have our own graves, and all of us have our own questions we're going to have to answer. We're going to have to answer to God at the end of the day, because the person who can have, who can have holes in his sneakers and holes in his clothes is probably a significantly more pious individual than I am. And maybe I'm going to need him on the day of judgment to help me out, and I keep that in my head. It's just like, listen, I can have all the nicest stuff in the world. The person that doesn't have anything of value is probably going to be the one that God's happy with. And I'm going to need him. And so that's I always keep that in my head. My dad always told me something. My dad always told me, whenever you have a feeling of like you're better than somebody else, look at yourself in the mirror.
Yeah.
He's like, look at yourself in the mirror before you even let that in your heart. And that's kind of what I do every day. You wake up for Fajr, you look at yourself in the mirror and you're just like, I'm here because I'm allowed to be here, and I have what I have because I'm allowed to have what I have, and that's kind of how I go about it. I don't. I mean, with my friends, like for example, I'll give you a thing. So when the Yeezys came out, Adidas came out with these cheaper version of the Yeezys that looked like them but weren't them.
I remember those. I had a pair of those actually.
And then a lot of individuals thought it was cool to make fun of them. Like these are bootleg Yeezys. These are more for the people who can't afford Yeezys. So what did I do? I went and go bought myself a white pair, and I wore them. And I'll be honest with you, they were comfortable. And I'll be honest with you, I was just like, why am I investing $300, $400, $500, $600 in Yeezys when these cost like $80 and they're just as comfortable? So that's for me. Like when I look at my closet, my sneaker closet, I have really like high end sneakers, but I also have really cheap $80 sneakers that just are comfortable. And I'm like, yo, these are fly. I like them. They suit me. They don't have to be $2,000. They can be $30. I'm like, yo, these are fine for me. These work for me. So for me, it's knowing yourself, and knowing that, just you gotta humble yourself. You gotta, everybody's on the even playing field, and that clothes and this material matters don't take away from a person's personality at the end of the day. People are beautiful in their own ways, and that's just it. So I always try to humble myself. I always try to look at myself in the mirror. I always try to relax. This is just a hobby, and I'll be honest with you, and I'll end with this because I'm going on a rant.
No, continue, please. It's a podcast. Good. Go for it.
But I'm a person that works in finance, right? And so I'm around a lot of individuals who have a lot of money. And when I mean a lot of money, I mean a lot of money. There's individuals who, if you look at them, so jogging pants, T-shirt, New Balance sneakers, and you're just thinking like, all right, this guy's a normal person. That dude's worth $12 million. That dude's worth $12 million. And and my expensive hobby of sneakers, he has an expensive hobby of watches that'll blow like my most expensive sneakers out the water. I've met people who like, yeah, I don't really care about sneakers, but I have a Rollie. I have a whole line of Rolexes, or I have a whole line of cars. So people, and they're the most humble individuals. Always having auctions and to raise money for individuals. So everybody is like, they have their own expensive hobby. Everybody has it. People travel for hobbies.
Yeah, that's such an interesting point as well. I mean, I think that's what when I was talking about like looking for something to spend my money on that I enjoy. It's because I don't really spend my money on anything.
Right.
Like I told you before, like I'm not really into to cars. Like I'll be honest with you, like I have an Audi, a very old one. My wife has like a Mitsubishi, really old car as well. I've driven the two, and to me, they're both the same thing. Like it doesn't mean anything to me. Do you know what I mean? And even when the time comes when I've got to buy a new car, I'm just going to buy the most standard, unimpressive car that there is, because it's not something that interests me. It's not something that, and I'm sure there are people that do enjoy cars. Many people like driving a BMW or whatever. But like for me, like it's not something that brings me happiness in any way. And I think that when you look at materialistic things, you have to ask yourself two questions. Number one, will this bring you closer to God? Or at the very least, will it take you away from God? So, for example, when I spoke about the Apple Watch, for me, I felt like it was weighing me down, almost taking me away from that sense of peace, you know. So I returned it straight away. And then the second question is, you know, is it going to bring you any sort of happiness? You know, are you actually going to appreciate God's blessings by owning it? And you also mentioned something very nice, Hasnain, which is that, you know, you would kind of give away your trainers in a heartbeat. And I have that as well. You know, if my house right now, God forbid, was burning down, I'm not gonna risk my life to
I'm not
grab my
I'm
trainers,
not grabbing
you know?
any pair of sneakers. I'm grabbing my life.
If someone turns up at my door and says, "Hey, I don't have any shoes," I'll say, "Hey, take my best shoes." I don't care. Like, it's not, you know, it's not something that I have no attachment to. And you actually reminded me of a really beautiful story about kind of like attachment to the material. And it's a really old story. Heard it a bunch of times through different lecturers in different mosques. But basically, there was a traveler who had read a book about aestheticism and about being detached from this world. And at the time, he was looking for the author of this book, who was a very renowned sheikh and a very renowned scholar. And he would carry this kind of like bowl with him, which he would use to wudu, to drink from, etc. He would carry with him wherever he goes. And he finally went to the person's house, and he saw this person had a big, massive mansion, a huge mansion with like different bedrooms, and, you know, like fit for a king basically. And when he went to the scholar and he just started yelling at him, he goes, you know, I read this whole book about aestheticism, this whole book about being detached from this world, and I see that you have this huge mansion. Like, what's wrong with you? Yeah. And the scholar looked at him, he goes, let's go for pilgrimage right now. Let's go to Hajj right now, me and you. The guy's like, right now? He's like, right now, let's go, me and you, let's go. He's like, okay. They set off on their horses and they went towards the Holy Land. And then the guy's like, I've got to go back. Sheikh says, why? He goes, because I forgot my bowl. I can't leave without my bowl. And he said, see, this is the thing. I have this huge mansion. I have all these things. But when it came to doing something for God, I left it in a second. You have this little tiny bowl where you couldn't leave it in a second for God. So it's not about what you own. It's not about if your house is big. It's not about if your car is amazing. It's not about how many shoes you own. It's more about your relationship with these materialistic things. Can you drop
absolutely.
it? You know, let's say, for example, God in some sort of manifestation comes knocking on your door and you have to sacrifice what you have. Will you sacrifice that in an instant for the sake of God? I think that's what we need to ask ourselves more so than anything. I think that is definitely the most.
You know, it's an interesting thing you mentioned. It's an interesting thing you mentioned, Hajj, because last year when I went to Hajj, that trip made me realize I'm wrapped in 2 towels and I'm walking around half barefoot.
Yeah.
I don't need half the things I have back home. Yeah. So sometimes it's just that, you know, that trip to make you realize that the less I have is more sufficient enough for me.
Yeah.
I was really, you know, Hajj, I was supposed to go again this year and I was really excited to go, but obviously I couldn't. Yeah. But Hajj was one of those trips where I came back and I was like, all right, a lot of this stuff I have excess of, like clothing, sneakers, and stuff like that. I was like, you know, let me get rid of this. Let me donate this stuff, you know, and that's kind of it. You know, it takes something like that to make you realize, all right, cool. Like, you know, Hasnain, let's calm down. You know, like you survived Hajj in 2 towels and sandals. You'll be 100% in the heat in those toilets. By the way, I don't know if you guys been to Hajj, but if you've seen the toilets,
I'm not Hajj yet, but yeah.
Inshallah, you go. It was such a beautiful experience. But the shower is the toilet.
Right.
So it's just like when you're on Mount Arafat, like so for me,
very
it's just like it's not like granite countertops and stuff like that. So for me, it was a trip like that.
Do you think you'd ever come to a point in your life where you'd get rid of all your sneakers?
No, I would not. Because it goes back to the appreciation of God that I have these, right? You know, some people will look at their Maserati and be like, that's a rizq from God. That brings me closer to God because that drives me to the mosque to pray to God. You know, people look at it that way. My shoes make me walk to the mosque. My shoes make me walk towards praising God. You know, that's kind of, I was reading this book and it was talking about how if you keep that mindset, you'll be, you're nothing's excessive, because once you have that mindset, then you don't need 10 pairs of shoes or 20 pairs of shoes. 5 would be fine. You don't need to go buy that Gucci shirt, which is like $1,000. Anything that covers you is fine. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
It,
And so
it's
that's kind
just
of how I look
because
at it.
even me, like I've trained, I've trained myself to, whenever I'm given any sort of materialistic blessing, which isn't a big deal, it's just a pair of shoes, or just whatever. I always try and train myself to. I've tried to train myself to ensure that my first reaction is Alhamdulillah, thank you Allah so much for this wonderful blessing. Thank you so much
Absolutely.
for giving me the ability to buy this. And like we've been saying, is that we appreciate it so much more having grown up without it, or having grown up in a state where these things are absolutely unattainable. And I think that's the same with all blessings. That's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts us through trials and puts us through situations where we have to be patient, have to be strong, because once we're out of that, once we're in that state of peacefulness and happiness, we look back and say, Alhamdulillah, thank you Allah so much for giving me, for example, food to eat on the table. And even like traveling, for example, you mentioned going to Hajj and seeing the toilet and kind of like even like me and you, like when we go, for example, to, or any of us here, when we go, for example, to the third world back home and we see poverty, I feel like it's really important to every year travel to that side of the world and remind yourself of what people are living through. So when you come back, now firstly you ensure you train yourself to give more, back more to your communities back home, but at the same time you think, Alhamdulillah, I'm so lucky to have a nice bed, I'm so lucky to have food on the table, I'm so lucky to live where I live, in a house or whatever. So I think these things, these materialistic things that we have, it's about, like you said, training yourself to be appreciative of them and to use them as a way to reach God through being thankful. Like I mentioned in the beginning of this podcast that we were somehow going to find a way to correlate sneaker culture with spirituality in Islam. And I think perhaps the link between the two is about appreciating what you have, appreciating what you can buy, appreciating that, you're able. I mean, even I remember I have a friend in Iraq. Every time I go there, he's like, I'm begging you, get me these sneakers when you come back. He wants like a pair of MX-90s or something. And it's like, even the fact that we can walk to any store and pick it up. And there's people on the other side of the world that, would love to have a pair, but it's so difficult for them to get it from anywhere. Even that in itself is a blessing, and that's a blessing at the same time that can be taken away from us. As we've seen with coronavirus, all the privileges that we had going out, being able to go where we want, do what we want, buy what we want, even that's been taken away from us. So I think that's also a reminder that Allah can take anything from you at any time, which is why it is important to be grateful. It is important to be thankful.
Exactly.
Zaahid, I want to speak to you, ask you about your Instagram account. Your whole thing is Islamic modest fashion. And the one thing that really drew me and Hasnain's eye to your Instagram.
I'm happy that you guys like it.
No, but the one thing that really drew us to your Instagram is because, you're wearing your dastashes, you're wearing your Islamic dress, but you have a pair of Sakais on, or you have a pair of Air Force Ones on. What kind of drew you to kind of mold these two different styles of fashion together?
So I've mentioned this before, but I always like to mention it again because I feel like again, it's trying to, obviously I try to be quite humble with this kind of thing, and I feel like what I'm doing on my Instagram has already been done before me. Other brothers do it all the time from day to day, and will continue to do when I go one day. I feel like all I've essentially done is just kind of package it in a way and present it to the world in a particular manner where it's just visually appealing. When I wasn't practicing, I used to kind of, essentially, you go past the masjids and you see the brothers that coming out, and especially if you're from cities, like inner cities and so on.
Everyone's wearing MX-90s.
Everyone's wearing runners. Everyone's wearing. They're not wearing. You got uncles and stuff wearing their sandals and stuff, but the younger kids and stuff, you know what I mean? They got their different kicks on, Air Force Ones or whatever the case may be.
I remember. Sorry, just to cut you off. I remember it's a thing going with my dad to Eid prayer. We used to go to Regis Park Mosque. I remember it's a thing. that your shoes can be stolen. You know, it's a thing that you know that people jump in even within the mosque. You know, when you're praying, they see those Air Max 90s, they'll grab them and run off. I'm sure everyone that we know has got a pair of sneakers that have been stolen at the mosque.
Exactly. I mean, that in itself, that concept alone, sometimes it still baffles me. You know? Then we're celebrating Eid, and then it's like,
oh my God,
steal my shoes today.
For sure.
But yeah, so. I lost my train of thought. What was I saying?
No, sorry, Karen. Yeah, so we're talking about how, you know, growing up in London, it's a normal thing to see all these youths going to the mosque in their kicks.
Yeah. So I would see brothers all the time with you know, with their long thobes and jubbas and so on, and you know, and there's brothers that really started. Some will have gilets on, and it'll be like navy blue matching with their whatever the sneaker is, a navy blue like Air Max 95 or something, for example. That's a really big memory I have. The brother had like a all white thobe. It was a navy blue gilet, and he had a pair of white and navy Air Max 95s on white, brand new socks, and he just looked the part. Like he just loved it. Like when I saw it, I was like, "This is one good-looking brother," and I'm like, "I want to be like that. I want to be like that." I said, "He looks too clean." Yeah. Like, you know what I mean? And I know he's Muslim, and I'm like, hold on a second. So I was like. So I was like, so he's practicing, and he's got nice shoes on his feet, and this is the thing. This is cool, and so and also at the time I was very into streetwear, and when I then started to practice, you know, subhanAllah, there was like next to no transition, because I was wearing very oversized garments and so on, and then when I started, you know, wearing more, you know, longer garments, nothing really changed, but I just saw it and said to myself, like, this is a thing. I don't know, in my head I've said, this is the thing. Why isn't more people doing this? And I was like, let me be. I looked over the internet. There was people. I'm not being mean in a way, but obviously a lot of my personal accounts, and people were already doing it, but the way I envisioned it was very different. And I even till now, I'm still developing and experimenting and trying to be different ways to kind of push this message of modest menswear out there. And you know, subhanAllah, I've even had you know old colleagues in you know, when I used to work in retail and so on. I've had people like because I've had, obviously, you know, not being practicing, I had a lot more non-Muslim friends than Muslim friends. Okay. So when I started practicing, obviously a lot of my non-Muslim friends are still there, and so they see my stuff and they're like, yo, this is sick, like this is cool, where did you get that from? And for me, that blew my mind, because I'm thinking the opposite, and this is at a time when, you know, subhanAllah, like on the news, all this terrorism stuff. At the time, I actually was living in East London, and East London was, you know, sorry, it was the hot spot at the time where all this madness was going on. Yeah. And still, people were like, yo, you know, like, how are you doing this? I even have one colleague, and what's mad is that, you know, obviously, you know, you have abayas and so on for the women, and then you got, the thobes and jubbas for the guys. I had a colleague, a female colleague in an old retail store, and she was like, where can I buy one of those things that you wore on your picture? Wow. So, and you know what I mean? And she was nowhere near Islam, but I mean, she was talking about like how she went, you know, to the pub before, like, you know, just going on a mat. I'm just like, oh, okay. Yeah. And then I was like, yeah, I posted a picture, by the way, you know, trying to change the subject. And she's like, oh, really? Let me check it out. She saw it, and she's like, well, when you make these ones one day, could you give me one? And I said, well, if I do women's wear one day, I'll give you like one time. And obviously, I don't talk to her now, but it's a long time ago. But that's kind of direction I'm going in, and inshallah, my aim is to kind of be the one that's leading this. And you know, subhanAllah, it's mad, you see it now, but there's brothers now more and more that are doing this. Got that photographer, compositions there, you know, editing's A1. You know, some of these guys are doing better than me, to be honest, you know, alhamdulillah. And so that's kind of like how it started and where I'm at now. And, you know, I'm still, you know, thinking about it.
No, yeah. I think one thing that you mentioned, which was so interesting, is about how fashion can bring people together. And you know, we spoke about how sneaker culture is about. We spoke about how there's two sides of sneaker culture, right? There's one very kind of dirty side where it's about flash and showing off and showing off how much wealth you have and showing off pride. And then you have another side which is about expressionism. It's about, you know, honestly, it's about uniting because,
Yeah.
you know, especially in America, Hasnain, you'll know this, and especially given the fact that sneaker culture is black culture, people will relate to you based on what you're wearing on your feet. You know, there's
Yeah.
no doubt
Absolutely.
about it whatsoever. You
Absolutely.
know, I go to America a lot. You know, I remember walking in Detroit. Everyone's wearing a pair of Jordan 4s or Jordan 6s or Jordan 1s. You know, it brings a lot of people together. And I think what's so interesting is that when you see Muslims wearing these sneakers, on some level, it tells people who aren't Muslim, who also enjoy these, that wow, Muslims are just like us. You know, I
Yeah.
remember reading an article about how, as you know, Zaahid, especially here in London, you have Muslims going to the mosque wearing their clothes, wearing sneakers as well.
Yeah.
You know, and whoever's not Muslim sees that kind of connotation, that kind of relationship between themselves and them as well. Hasnain, like, give me something. You grew up in an African American neighborhood, and we spoke earlier before offline about how sneaker culture is black culture and about how you were influenced by black
Yeah.
culture.
Yeah.
And we also know that, especially in America, black culture, a lot of it is very Islamic. You know, the majority of the demographic of Muslims in America are African American Muslims. Islam is something very, very deeply entrenched in African American culture. So how do you kind of bring all those kind of themes together? Growing up in Queens, New York, wearing those pair of trainers, growing up, with friends who are African American, you're also Muslim. How does that identity kind of unite you and your peers growing up in the environment that you did?
Well, it's interesting you bring it up that way because my sneaker culture and my sneaker game came from my African American friends, my black friends, who kind of put me on it. It's like, these are Jordans. So, and we'll probably get to this in a bit, but like the fashion trends, how they're different on your side versus my side. Because over here, Jordan rules the street. Literally, if you have a pair of Jordans, like, all right, we got you understand. Yeah. So for me, like, that's kind of how I got into it, because I was seeing, like, I was on the basketball team in high school because I'm tall and lanky and I can grab a rebound. So they put me on the team. Why not? So I was on the basketball team, and like, I'm just playing in regular sneakers that are no names, right? Because that's all I can get at that time. But all my teammates, majority of them, African American, athletic, cool guys, playing in their Jordans, and for them, it's basically Michael Jordan's like whole upbringing and who he is, like, that inspired them to, like, this is the sneaker culture, this is our culture, basketball's our thing, this is what we do. And I learned through them. And as I learned through them, and all you have to simply do was talk to them about sneakers, like yo, like, did you see the new Jordan 2s? Did you see this? The colorways. That builds the community. That builds, like, your brothers, your friends, especially, when everybody's so divided today. Like, a lot of my African American friends, like, they're all sneakerheads. And they'll text me like, hey, yo, these came out. You want to go, like, camp out and get them? I'm not really a camping out type of guy, I'll tell you that. But so, like, that's kind of how, like, my relationship with my peers growing up started. It was just basically them teaching me, this is kind of our culture. This is kind of, what we do. We love sneakers. We love, Michael, Jordans, because that means that you're moving up in the world. That means something to them. And to me, it's just like, wow, this is really cool. And then I caught on to the sneaker game. And then when I got my first pair of Jordans, you believe I ran to school the next day. That night I took my Jordans out. I ironed my best clothes in high school. I'm like, I'm gonna go tomorrow looking clean, looking fresh into school. All my friends saw me. They're like, oh, yo, he got the newest Jordans. And, like, it's the whole, like, you hype each other up. Like, we're all brothers. Like, we had the same exact hobby. We want the best for each other. Like, if my friend gets a pair of Jordans, I'm happy for him, because we can now switch sneakers because we're the same size, So that's kind of, it builds that community that way. And it was the most beautiful thing in the world.
No, I mean, there is that insane relationship between African American community, other immigrant communities, and Muslims as well, because ultimately we're all oppressed. We're all downtrodden, whether it be here in the UK or there in America. We are the bottom of the barrel. We are the ones who are burning to death Zaahid in Grenfell Tower. We are the ones who are living in poverty and just trying to make ends meet, while the elite rule over us, and that is what unites us. And I think The reason I talk about how there's two different sides of sneaker culture is because the side that focuses on the expression has that uniting factor. I'll never forget walking in Detroit, on Detroit River. I had a family member who was wearing full abaya. African American guy is walking past wearing Jordan 4s, bends down, says "Salaam alaikum, sister," and walks past us. That is kind of like the uniting factor of these different communities. And I feel like sneaker culture is a uniting factor of those different communities. So just kind of like to wrap up, there's so much we can talk about, and I think we've spoken for way too long on something so materialistic. And like I said, there is someone listening right now who's like, how are these guys still talking pairs of shoes?
It will never end. The call will never end. Yeah,
the call will never end. But Zaahid, tell us about the difference between London specifically sneaker culture and American sneaker culture, because I feel like even like with Hasnain, not to call you out Hasnain, but when I first showed you Zahid's Instagram page, you were like, is he really a sneakerhead? I was like, look, when it comes to London guys, we're about Air Maxes, we're about Safaris, we're about these things, right?
Because I checked your Instagram out and I was like, all right, this guy, like, okay, I see. He's like, I love your work. I think that your pictures and your whole work is phenomenal. But I was scrolling. I was specifically looking at what you were wearing, and it was like Air Max Sakai's, and I was scrolling through.
He was like, "Where's the Jordan 1s? Where's the Jordan 4 breads? That's what's going through his head.
I think I'm wearing a pair of Jordan 11s in one of them. I think.
I missed it because I was so thrown away with the Sakai's and the Air Maxes. I'm like, yo, like. So I was asking, is he a sneakerhead?
but I think Zaahid, what's so interesting is that sneaker culture is so reflective of the communities that you're in. So in Germany, they're wearing something different than they are in the UK, and even in Manchester's got a different sneaker culture than London. Manchester, they're all about the three stripes, they're all about those Continentals, they're all about those Stan Smiths. Here, I feel like in London, it's all about Air Max 90s, it's all about 95s, it's all about those sneakers because they're more grimy than other sneakers. London's a very grimy place. London's a very bleak and grey place, and I feel like that's why we didn't grow up on colourful Jordans. Just tell us a bit about the intricacies and the specifics when it comes to sneaker culture.
Educate me, man. Educate me.
I guess there's levels to being a sneakerhead, and I guess I know a little bit when it comes to sort of the difference. I feel like when it comes to the States. And you can either, let me know if I'm right or wrong, but I feel like because basketball is such a big thing in the States, I feel like that is where a lot of the sneaker culture came from as well. Because you're seeing all the players on the court like wearing. Everybody wanted to be like the players on the court, and so if whatever they had, they wanted. And I feel like it's all about it's all about basketball. It's all about the sport. It's all about the history and. Like feeling like those players, being like those champions, kind of champion players and so on. And I feel like in the UK, basketball isn't I wouldn't say the top sport here. It's football, So and when it comes to the runners and so on, I know music has a part to play. Grime.
For sure.
Was an extremely big thing, and. I feel like with the music scene and so on, and football as well. Football was a big influence as well to like why we go for more, I guess, the more athletic kind of silhouettes and so on. But obviously, most of these sneakers that we all enjoy, like they all had some sort of connectivity to like sport or so on, whether it was tennis or running or so on, and then everything's just become lifestyle. But yeah, I think that's kind of like the difference, really. I think now, I guess people in London just kind of want to just stay comfy,
Just carry on with their lives.
Streetwear is a big thing. Like streetwear is a big thing when you see like high luxury brands doing streetwear. They never were doing this before. Like
absolutely.
Again with like Dior and Jordan, this would never be a thing. Supreme, Louis Vuitton. It would never be a thing. Like no way, they don't stick. It's a different type of person, and so I feel like. That's kind of like the way I see the difference, I guess. Yeah. I'll tell
you a funny story that happened to me in Knightsbridge when I was in London a few years back. I stayed in Knightsbridge, and I was like, let me go look at the sneaker store. So I Googled some like sneaker store. I forgot what it was called, but you know, for me, I walked in and I'm looking at the sneakers to make sure that they're legit, because you can go into any store and they could be like, you know, fakes or knockoffs and stuff like that. But this place was legit, and I was looking at the sneakers, and they had obviously Jordans on one side, and you know how it is. So I'm looking at the Jordans, and there's two pairs that I really like, and something you should know about me is when I travel, I like to bring something back that I bought from that country or from that individual. So I'm like, you have this in my size. Now I'm telling him US size, you know. I'm a US 10.
They should know though. They should know.
Yeah, they should. He knew. He was like, yeah, we don't have that in the US 10. Sorry. So I was like, all right, do you have this in the US 10? He's like, no, sorry. So then I was like, you know, I was a little upset. I'm like, all right, it's cool. And these are Jordans. He's like, no, but I have US 10s and Air Maxes on this side. I was like, I'm not really interested on that side right now. You don't have my size.
You know, the thing is, it's so interesting because I had a pair of Air Max ones and I sold them. And I do like Air Max 90s, but I just can't wear them because I feel like everyone in London is wearing them. It's such a London thing. You know, everyone's got them. But I think, kind of like to end off, and this will be a conversation that we'll have hopefully with our next guest, Nabil Zaidi of Profound Aesthetics. Sorry, we'll try to get into like when it comes to using fashion as a way to express, or using fashion as a way to be modest. And Zaahid, I wanted to kind of end off with asking you about that. What's so important, do you think, about male modesty? You know, I think in Islam, when it comes to Muslims, you know, it's pretty obvious that the first topic of discussion is always about, when it comes to modesty, women's hijab, and making sure they're wearing hijab, their hair's covered, their bodies are covered, etc. But the one kind of conversation that's always missing is about male modesty. And, you know, even like with me growing up, I've tried to ensure that my clothes are kind of like more loose and more modest. And even like when it comes to fashion trends, you see trends moving that way. So Hasnain, we were talking earlier about fear of God. And you know, you look at fear of God, Jerry Lorenzo's kind of mentality when it comes to fashion and clothing, is that, you know, things should be very loose and kind of like oversized, and essentially Islamic and modest. And I think that's what's so interesting about all these cultures kind of moving together. So Zaahid, what do you think is so important about men's hijab and men's modesty, and why do you think that conversation isn't really happening as much as it should happen?
Yeah, I think it doesn't really happen because I think it's a combination of things. I think it's one thing that people don't really. I think it's education. Like a lot of things, I'll be honest, without any understanding or any sort of studying involved or any knowledge, or just kind of on that path, you don't understand the smaller details to everything, you know. And the sunnah plays a big part in that. But also just being, you know, like proud to be like Muslim. I know, like, you know, it's a hard conversation to have because everybody's on a different level. Like there's some Muslims who are scared. I'm talking about males in particular. They're scared to show their, you know, to show their Islam and so on. And I guess the reality is that, guys, we can just kind of blend in for the most part. Yeah. And some people take advantage of that, or some people just go with the flow with that. My approach essentially is, and again, it's as I've slowly started to practice, you know, month by month, year by year, trying to learn a little bit, or just the little bit that I do learn, just to implement it, you know, the little bit that it may be. It's not even about how much you know, it's about how much you put into practice, right? And so for me, I got to a stage where I'm like, I'm not really, I'm trying to let you know in your face that I'm Muslim. Like where a lot of people shy away from that. And also that the men's hijab isn't hard to adhere to. That's another thing. It's not difficult at all. It's as simple as, and I know this is like a difficult one with guys, but now especially when the weather was quite hot and stuff, go into a retail store. The shorts are short. The shorts are really short, you know, and like there has to be a certain length when it comes to these shorts, you know. And I'm typing long short, and you don't want to type in long short. The short is still halfway up my leg. It's long short.
I faced that's why I don't want a pair of shorts for that reason.
It's ridiculous. Like, and then so it's like, then if you type in 3/4 and it's all the way down there, it's like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm trying to look good at the same time, you know. And so I guess like those kind of challenges, in a way, I feel like there's barakah in that, you know. There's
Yeah,
barakah
sure.
in the fact that when I say to myself and I'm trying to find this item, I'm like, oh, I can't find it. Alhamdulillah, it probably wasn't meant to be anyways. I probably shouldn't even be wearing it.
Yeah.
My life has not changed at all. I probably save a couple quid, you know what I mean? So I think when it comes to men's modesty, it's a barrier that I think people shouldn't really put themselves in. Even, for example, like another thing that people, I feel like struggle, and I used to struggle with, like suits. If you go to a wedding, you want something a bit tailored and, you know, so on and so forth. But there is a right way of doing it.
Yeah.
There's a, you know, like there's a right. You don't have to get the you know, the bottoms as tight. You can make them a little loose. They achieve the same thing. You know what I mean? Like, I've bought tight suits in the past. Like, it's one of those things. So I feel like when that barrier kind of, that barrier that people put in front of them is broken down, disappears, and just have fun with it. You know, just enjoy it. Like for me especially, I'm a kind of person where I'm trying to let people. Obviously, when it comes to like cities, New York and London and so on, you know, you see a lot of Muslims everywhere. So the non-Muslim is used to it. Yeah. But like, I mean, have you ever seen somebody in a thobe, you know, with like, I don't know, like a particular turban style, you know, got some, I don't know, MCAs on in a sneaker convention? No. But I guarantee you, if you were to present yourself, it's a form of da'wah as well. Yeah. And it's a vibe, you know what I mean? It's you're representing yourself. And but again, you don't have to do that. I go to the office as well, and I don't necessarily wear. I don't even think I can. I might try it one day. Just roll up. And you know what's mad? My team's all, you know, mixed for the most part, but even them they're educated. But you know what I mean. So that's my kind of like take on it. Just enjoy it, embrace it. The deen was never. You know, Islam is not hard. It's us that make it hard. And you know, inshallah, when we make this kind of approach, we'll see the barakah in it, and I'll be a testament to that. I've been very strict on my Instagram account, and you'll be surprised. I've never had a back. Nobody's ever come back at me and said, "Oh, Akhi, why are you doing this?" And I think it was only one time, and it was my name. My name didn't match my clothing. I was dressing modest, and my name was Zaahid the Great. God knows why I called it Zaahid the Great. But I'm called Zaahid the Great, and I'm trying to be all humble and stuff. But you know what I mean? So I put it out there, and like 2 people said, "Yeah, this is not really that cool." So I changed it to Zaahid the Great. So yeah, alhamdulillah, that will be my 2 cents on it, on my spends on. Yeah,
that's wonderful. I think that is a great place to end it. And I think, you know, one kind of take back for me from that is that, you know, as Muslims, we share a love of a culture that is beyond, that is not just set only for Muslims, you know, that is interlinked with different communities. We spoke about African American and Black communities, but also, you know, white communities, Latino communities, communities of all different shapes and sizes and colors love sneakers. And, you know, I think that makes it a uniting factor for different kinds of people, including Muslims. And, you know, you mentioned something very nice, was that we never seen, you know, someone rock up to a sneaker convention wearing a thobe. We should see that. You know, we should
probably
people...
be me soon.
No, it'll be. But, you know,
and
people
you know
people need to know. You know, Muslims are here. Muslims are also care about these things. You know, Muslims are also fascinated by these things. But at the same time, we are grounded by our faith, which, if anything, makes us appreciate sneakers more, because we see the blessing in it, right? Zaahid, if anyone wants to reach out to you or follow you, what's your social media handles and where can they reach you?
So at the moment, I'm more active on YouTube. Well, I've just started YouTube recently, and then Instagram. So Instagram is ZAAHIDMA, Zaahid, and it's the same on YouTube as well. So Instagram is more of where I do the styling and kind of a bit more connected with people that follow me, and then YouTube's kind of that in-depth, you know, more explanation, more background context, and just have a lot more fun and behind the scenes and stuff. So yeah, those are the 2 places. So everybody hit me up. I message to pretty much everybody. The amount of people that ask me where I get things, they're gonna ask me. So just ask me. Where'd you get that hat from?
Zaahid, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it. Hasnain, thank you again. We'll see you guys again soon.
Inshallah.
All right, and that was a very interesting conversation between myself, Hasnain, and Zaahid on sneaker culture and our spirituality. I hope you enjoyed it. If there's one thing that we can all take back from this episode, it's that we should always thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for every little blessing in our lives. I'm sure each and every single one of us has some sort of hobby, some sort of passion that we spend money on, that we enjoy, that is materialistic, and I think it's important to remember that we should always turn toward Allah and thank Him for even those little things, because it's in His mercy and in His blessings that we enjoy them. I hope you enjoyed it. Please do not forget to subscribe on whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on. We're on Apple Podcasts, we're on Anchor, we're on Spotify, and we're also on YouTube, so please make sure you subscribe on all platforms if you can, and don't forget to leave a 5-star review, and don't forget to share this with your friends. We have quite a few interesting episodes coming up with fascinating guests from all over the world, and we're really excited to carry on, inshallah, so do stay tuned, and inshallah we'll see you next time. Thank you for coming to visit us here at 786 Boulevard.